Slovakia's Minister of Interior, Denisa Sokova, said the crash between an overloaded lorry and a passenger bus where at least 12 people died was the worst accident in Slovakia's history. The accident occurred during rainy weather on a winding two-lane road near the city of Nitra, 90 km east of the capital, Bratislava. Speaking from the accident site, Sokova said 4 children were confirmed among the dead while 17 people were injured in the crash. 3 of the injured are in serious condition and are undergoing surgery at a hospital in Nitra. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Naftali Bennett visited the Army's Southern Command for security consultations amid escalating violence between Israel and Islamic Jihad militant group in the Gaza Strip. 23 Palestinians have been killed in 2 days of violence. The fighting, the worst in months, erupted on Tuesday after Israel killed Baha Abu al-Atta, a senior commander of the Iran-backed Islamic Jihad militant group. Anti-government protesters in Pakistan called off a 2-week sit-in on the capital's main highway but began what they called a Plan B aimed at crippling the country's roads and ousting Prime Minister Imran Khan. The protests, led by Fazl-ur-Rahman, head of the conservative Jamiat-Ulema-e-Islam party, began with the Azadi March on October 27 from the southern city of Karachi. Thousands of protesters reached the capital Islamabad on October 31st, where they have been holding a sit-in demanding Khan's resignation. Exiled in Mexico, Bolivia's former president Evo Morales received the keys to Mexico City. Morales' resignation on Sunday on the back of rising pressure over accusations of vote rigging in last month's election, but he has struck a defiant tone from Mexico where he is seeking asylum. He told the event that his crime was being Bolivia's first indigenous president. In 48 hours of turmoil in Bolivia during the weekend, mutinous police climbed on station buildings and joined marches. The Spanish royal couple of King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia toured Old Havana during the first state visit ever by a Spanish monarch to Cuba, which is Spain's former colony turned communist-run nation. The visit illustrates the normalization of Europe's relations with Cuba, even as the United States doubles down on a decades-old policy of seeking to force the government to reform by tightening its crippling trade embargo. Some Spanish politicians and Cuban dissidents have criticized the trip, saying it legitimizes Cuba's one-party system at a time of increased repression. Italy's Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte visited Venice after the worst flooding hit the historic city in more than 50 years. After meeting with local authorities, Conte said that an ad hoc investigation and damage assessment will be underway. He also said that he anticipated an emergency cabinet meeting to release emergency funds for the city. Conte said the so-called Moses project, the movable undersea barriers that are meant to limit flooding in Venice, will be completed soon. But the project, which was opposed by environmentalists concerned about damaging the delicate lagoon ecosystem, has been delayed by cost overruns and corruption scandals, with no launch date in sight. The California Public Utilities Commission voted to open an investigation into preemptive power outages that blacked out large parts of the state for much of October. Strong winds sparked fears of wildfires. The decision came after hearing from the public on the many hardships the blackouts caused for residents. The state's largest utility, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, initiated multiple rounds of shutoffs and plunged nearly 2.5 million people into darkness throughout northern and central California. People in the small town of Brandenburg, close to the German capital of Berlin, welcomed Tesla's decision to build its first European factory and design center in their region. This gives the US electric car pioneer the coveted Made in Germany label, just as local rivals Audi, BMW and Mercedes prepare to launch competing cars. Tesla chief executive Elon Musk announced the move at a prestigious German car award ceremony and said the new plant would make batteries, powertrains and cars, starting with the Model Y sports utility vehicle. Hong Kong remains paralyzed. A burst of violence in Hong Kong has pushed the city even further away from the possibility of peaceful resolution. The scenes, already some of the most graphic examples of violence since the anti-government protests began, were soon eclipsed by an hours-long battle at one of Hong Kong's most prestigious universities. Police rained tear gas and rubber bullets on students as protesters fired back with Molotov cocktails and, in some cases, fiery arrows dipped in petrol. Thousands of Kufa University students and trade union members joined the Iraqi protests. The protesters can be seen carrying Iraqi flags and chanting anti-government slogans as they march towards the main square of protests in Najaf. Deadly clashes between protesters and security forces intensified last weekend. More than 300 people have been killed since the first wave of demonstrations began on October 1st. Lebanese army troops struggled to open main roads blocked by demonstrators on after economic reforms proposed by the government failed to stem a historic wave of protests against the political elite. The country remained paralyzed for a seventh day by protests, with roads blocked across the country and banks and schools still shut. Hundreds of thousands of people have flooded the streets, furious at a political class they accuse of pushing the economy to the point of collapse. Catalan riot police dispersed separatist protesters in the town of Salt, clearing a blockage in the region's major AP7 highway, which demonstrators blocked access over 2 days. A secretive protest group called Democratic Tsunami has claimed responsibility for the disruption, which is aimed at drawing international attention to the Catalan independence drive. A group of Brazilian protesters voiced their displeasure with the visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping as Brazil's government signed bilateral agreements with China in a sign of warming relations. The protesters held signs reading "Brazil and Hong Kong together for democracy" and "China can't buy Brazil" in Brasilia as the BRICS group of nations met nearby. Country heads of the group of major emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, have arrived at BRICS for what is widely expected to be a low-key technical discussion. Climate change activist Greta Thunberg has set sail for Spain. Thunberg left the United States headed for a United Nations climate change conference in Madrid in December. The teenager rejects air travel because of its high levels of greenhouse gas emissions. Thunberg has spent the last 3 months in North America after arriving in New York City by boat on August 28th, delivering a speech at a United Nations climate summit there in September. Nearly two-thirds of the United States is set to experience freezing temperatures this week. The deadly winter blast of snow and ice has already killed 4 people in crashes on icy roads. 300 weather records across the country could be shattered as an Arctic blast hits nearly 70% of the United States. Over 200 million people are under winter warnings. Heavy snow has hit northern Slovenia, forcing roads to be cleared and for cars to be equipped with winter tires. Residents of the village of Ritis have been out with snow removal trucks to clear the roads since early morning. Meanwhile, police and traffic safety officers have also been checking the safety of the cars on the road. Delhi NCR is gasping for breath as the noxious smog resulting from raging farm fires and unfavorable weather have pushed pollution levels in the region towards the emergency zone for the third time in the last 15 days. Schools in Delhi and adjoining districts have been advised to remain shut today and tomorrow due to the spike in pollution levels. The Environment Pollution Prevention and Control Authority has also asked industries not to be running on clean fuels to remain shut till Friday. In Iran, where air pollution has reached dangerously high levels in the capital city of Tehran, the average concentration of hazardous airborne particle has gone to as high as 150 in 10 districts of Tehran. The figure is above the levels recommended by the World Health Organization. Schools in Tehran have been shut as a thick layer of smog continues to engulf the city. Urban climber Alan Robert, also known as the French Spider-Man, scaled a skyscraper in Paris where he was greeted by French police upon his return. The 57-year-old made his way up the 152-meter Ariane Tower, despite police standing guard below him, warning him that his pursuit was dangerous. Following his ascent, Robert said he had a problem at the top of the building where the structure becomes more complicated. From trekking through Antarctica to driving an electric scooter across China, adventurous feats were the focus of the year's Guinness World Records Day. The participants already have a range of role models to inspire them. According to the editor-in-chief of Guinness World Records, the day is a global celebration of record breaking in which 600,000 people attempted a record in one day. The theme this year has been fixed as Spirit of Adventure.
Thank you, thank you. This is such an honor.
A rescued puppy is attracting a lot of attention because of its cute resemblance to a unicorn. The nearly 10-week-old puppy named Narwhal has a tail-like appendage growing from his forehead. Narwhal was rescued over the weekend and sent to Max Mission in Jackson, Missouri, which specializes in fostering animals with special needs. Although it looks like a tail, Narwhal cannot wag it. On a day when impeachment hearings featured grim and grave legislators, the mood was decidedly lighter on another part of Capitol Hill as therapy dogs wagged and snuffled, bringing smiles to faces of strange staffers. Pet partners and the Pet Industry Joint Advisory Council teamed up to bring dogs of all shapes and sizes to the Rayburn building as visitors stopped by for a hello. The dogs won over even the most cautious, including a staffer from the superintendent's office, Monica Neal. You'd be forgiven for thinking it was a scene from a futuristic sci-fi movie, a giant flaming lion leaping across the roof of a football ground in front of thousands of spectators. But for Argentine's side, the spectacular big cat hologram marked the reopening of the club's new stadium. The lion leaps out the sky and struts along the roof before jumping into the pitch and roaring in front of the assembled fans. The use of the lion was due to the club's nickname, El Leon.